From the past, we now return to the present with all the challenges and opportunities it presents for the web. It's my pleasure to introduce the curator of TED Global and president of the International Film Festival and Forum on Human Rights, Bruno Giussani. Bruno will be spending the next 20 minutes or so in conversation with Sir Tim to get an insight into his thoughts and aspirations for his invention as it embarks on its 4th decade. They have kindly invited us to listen in. Bruno.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Those of us who follow Sir Tim, please join me. Those of us who follow Sir Tim and his activities and his voice and his writings have probably noticed something interesting. There are actually 2 Sir Tims right now. One who's kind of a bit disappointed and very worried about the web, where the web got after 30 years, starting with potential for expansions of freedoms and ended up in a different world. And the other who's trying to fix it or figure out ways to fix it. And so we're going to spend a few minutes talking about those 2 things. Thanks for joining us again. Tim, you said recently in an interview something that really remained with me. There is a lot of good in the web, of course, but you said this: the web is becoming a large-scale, and I quote, a large-scale emergent phenomenon which is anti-human. That's really hard wording. When did you realize that it was time for you to kind of step back and take a second look at your creation?
You have to check the quote, but I think what I said was we have to be careful. We need to constantly be analyzing the web and how people interact on it. Because what I'm worried about is that there should be a large-scale emergent phenomenon. That there should be sort of like the financial system works fine and then one day it crashes, and like Chinese society sort of worked fine for some definition of fine, and then at one point they had a cultural revolution, which suddenly changed very dramatically. And that sort of, so there's like you could get something super cool or superheated will look fine, and then it suddenly change. Could that happen? One of the concerns is that could happen on the web socially. Could you go to sleep one day and find out when you wake up that there has been a social revolution, that there has been a conspiracy theory which has taken over the entire web overnight, very, very quickly, and that and there is now a trend for completely distrusting all the old authorities, that sort of thing. So that was the sort of thing I thought we should have people doing math to find out, to model the way people interact, and we should measure and check, how if you put people together, we should find out how they work, how they function, and then predict with mathematics how they work large scale. That was the sort of thing behind that.
Zeynep Tufekci in the panel before said what creates the problem is also what makes the web wonderful. Its openness, its capacity to connect everywhere and everybody, etc. But I have the impression that maybe the key reason why we got where we got today, with all this set of problems, is the fact that mostly at the center of all the business models of the web, there is data, particularly personal data. And you seem to be starting from there to look at it in a different way. So I want to touch upon 2 things. There are technology fixes and there are political fixes. Maybe we can start with the tech fixes first. You're launching into a project. You launched several years ago into a project to re-decentralize the web. Tell us about what does it mean, re-decentralizing the web?
Okay, so let's start off then with the vision of the World Wide Web when it started off. And thanks, by the way, that was an amazing project reproducing the browser. Do you notice the browser? So the original web browser was a read-write browser. The idea was you'd be working on a project, and any time that you you saw something that somebody else had, an idea that somebody else had put in there, you could absorb it. But also, if you had an idea, like a connection between two things, you could say, oh, if you're interested in that, you should be interested in that. You could make a link, hit save, save all the things back, and very quickly you'd added data to it. So first of all, there's the difference between the read-only web and the read-write web. An important part of it for me was that it should be a read-write web. And then, originally it was kind of decentralized because somebody at CERN could just put an experiment, could fire up their own web server, and so in principle, everybody could have their own web server where they could be their own publisher, but also have their own read-write space. So the need to be able to interact wasn't really, in fact, when browsers, the browsers people used took off, they weren't editors. So how did people interact? So what happened is we ended up with this sort of Web 2.0, as people called it, where we didn't have official numbering systems, but what the press called Web 2.0 was the web where you go to websites and you fill in forms and you tell your social network, oh, that's me in that photo, or that, I like this because of this, and you would, and so bit by bit, you would put data in. And the data, yes, you could write blogs, but what was captured in user-generated content, UGC, in that phase of the web, was people were actually capturing important semantic data. So they didn't just know that you were interested in the photo, they knew who was in the photo. That was very valuable data. It was from people. So how can you imagine a world in which it's decentralized? We don't have to rely on a centralized database. So imagine that we have a world where you are running apps, you're running web apps, or they can be other apps. You can be managing your photos, managing your contacts, managing your calendar, whatever it is, and the data, instead of, you combine the user-generated content idea of being able to input value to the system with everybody has their own web page idea, website idea, and so you say, yes, I will generate data, but it'll go onto my website. So that is that's the idea behind it.
So your answer to the question is actually a specific project. It's called Solid, which has data as its center. Solid stands for social linked data. It's a way to free data from.
Well, it used to. Yeah, it used to stand for social linked data. It doesn't anymore. It's just Solid.
Okay, it's just Solid. We just go for the acronym. Perfect. But explain the tech behind Solid. What they're trying to imagine. So this notion that I control and own my data. How do we bring the data back to the user?
Well, Solid is certainly not rocket science. It's not even particle physics science. It's
afterwards
it's just the web.
Yes.
It's just the web, but we're using but it's the web with a few things added to it. First of all, it has. You can't do collaboration, really. The reason why the web didn't become, one of the main reasons why it didn't become a big read-write web, is if you're sharing stuff, if you're inputting data, you need to do it within a group. You need to be able to protect it. So, for that, you need to have authentication and authorization. And so Solid gives everybody the ability to have one or more IDs. So first of all, it gives you a global ID, gives you a single login across all the Solid compatible systems. So and when you've got your ID, then that means that you can if you give me your business card, and it's got your web ID on it from Solid, then I can go back home. I can take pictures of you, and I can go back home, and I can give you access to it. All I need to know is your ID. Anytime you log onto my systems, you can leave a trace of your ID, so I can use that to build a group. I can use that to build. I can use that to put into the access control of my Solid system and share anything with you. So the idea of Solid is it's a bit like it's a bit like a Unix system. So if you're using a Unix mainframe, there are files and there are users and there are groups. And users have names, which are short names. Solid is like the Unix system, except instead of a short name of a user, it's the URL. So the user can be anywhere on the web. A group has a name, which is the URL, so the group can be anywhere on the web. A file we already have those on the web. They have URLs, and then the access control for the file can allow any combination of groups and users to get access to the file. Really simple. It's just really like the whole web is one great big Unix system, and on it you have group permissions and individual permissions, and then you can write apps. So as a developer, you write, basically it's like writing Unix apps. You read and write data, you set up permissions, and you build collaborative software. All right. So
sounds not obvious, but it's not obvious at all.
Really, it's a flip. Because, all the technology is really simple, all the ideas are just Unix, but when you separate the apps, you see, when you write an app, you don't store the data. When you write an app, you ask, just the fact that the developer then asks the user the program asks the user where that is going to they want the data stored, so that means that you give complete control choice of the user as to where they store it. So that change to separate the apps from the data it's technically not really very hard, but it's a massive change socially.
Because right now, the app and data are actually very, very connected. I mean, there is no way to move from a big platform to another big platform easily because the data are so connected and structured for that specific app. So it's a way of giving autonomy to data in a way. Now, at what point is the development of the technology? I assume that it's not ready for general use. So
it's not ready for general use, or you'll be using it already. But if you're a developer, so we've got a bunch of open source software. There are a couple of servers. One that is functional. It's called Node Solid Server. If you are interested and you're a developer, then do get involved. Do find the Solid project on GitHub. Do find the Gitter channels where we chat. And join us there and help us. There's a lot of, we're using basic web standards, but also there are a lot of standards we need to make for all of the interoperability between the applications. So we need common formats we've got common formats for contacts, we need common formats for events and talks and all kinds of things.
Now, there is a whole movement called decentralized web that Solid is part of. There is a decentralized web summit. There are alternatives that are decentralized to Twitter and to YouTube and others. I guess that if it was an easy thing, many people would be using that, and instead only a few people are using these apps. When do you think we're going to get to the point where we are going to start, as normal users using the decentralized web?
So I've been very strictly told that I should never give a date for that. For two reasons. I think partly because things always take longer than you think. The other is that there are people, we have quite a lot of developers. We didn't really tell anybody about it very much, but when we turned the interrupt.com website on, there was interrupt.com didn't have a website until last October, and we turned it on the Friday. By the end of the weekend, we had I think 30,000 users on each of the two systems, which we on solid.community and interrupt.net. So there are people who are playing with it, even though we've told them not to. And so it's possible that, and we hope that they're all developers, we hope they're all going to help code. And so projects like the hackathon you guys had will be very much in order. But it's possible that at any point that some small community of people who find that Solid actually works really well for them will just take off and start using it.
Okay. There is another aspect which is less technical about fixing the current situation. It is social and political in a way. With Web Foundation and your collaborators and many other people, you have developed this notion of a contract for the web. So tell us about that. What is the contract for the web?
So the contract for the web is something that we're taking advantage of this. It's triggered by two things. The 30 years is one excuse, if you like, for stepping back and looking at it, but also it happens to coincide with this point where 50% of humanity is now using this web thing. So at that point as well, you've got to step back and look. And so what the Web Foundation has done is say, well, there's only two things to do. One is get the other half online as quickly as possible, of course, because it is becoming more and more unfair that they aren't. And the other is, for the people who are online, whoops, the web is not the web we wanted in every respect. So work really, really hard to keep it open and free like we always have, keep it fight for net neutrality, but also think about other aspects, privacy, think about owning control of your own data, think about how social networks really should control hate speech and where that should fit in with free speech. Think about if we are going to implement end-to-end encryption for everything, then how are social networks going to try to prevent themselves being used for very, very malicious instigation of genocide, for example? There are lots of there are some really easy things out there when it comes to making the web we want. Yeah, no, freedom, net neutrality, more bandwidth. You can always shout for more bandwidth, more reliability, more inclusion. You need to share also, but when you look at, you also need to make sure that. But when you look at the other half of it, you think it's very simple. What the first thing you shout for is that it should be more affordable. The simplest thing to go for is affordability, because it's affordability of phones and the affordability of network connections, which has sort of driven this growth to 50%. But also there are other things which you really wouldn't have thought of like the fact that men are 24% more likely to use the web than women, for example. Other things that need to be fixed in that part.
So just to go briefly back to the contract, this is how to connect to the next half, which is a big element. But the contract is a set of principles, right? It's a sort of bill of rights for the web, in a way. It's a contract.
It starts with 9 principles, and that's the easy bit, in a way. The idea behind the contract is there are 3 groups that need to do things. A lot of them are figuring out what to do now. Governments and large companies are, to a certain extent, all realize that there are things they need to do to fix the web and to be good, responsible participants in the web, and individuals as well. So the contract is the contract between 3 groups: individuals, governments, and companies.
And those who sign up basically self-commit to adhere to those principles, in a way.
If you sign up, you're saying, yeah, those principles are really important, of course, duh. But I want to be part of the details. Well, the contract for the web is about sitting down in working groups with other people who've signed up, and to say, okay, so let's work out what this really means. How are we actually going to, where's the balance between leaving the tech companies to do the right thing and regulating them? Where's the balance between freedom of speech and hate speech, things like that. So the contract is not a written in stone thing. The contract for the web phenomenon is one of people saying, yes, I think this stuff is important, and I want to be involved with the discussions to work out the details.
So the creator of the web creating a movement to save the web in a way.
Tim, I have to do that. Yeah. But
Tim, I'm very mindful of the fact that you need to catch a plane in a few minutes. So we are sending you off on a trip. And the trip is about 30 hours for the 30th anniversary of the web. So at 8 a.m. we started this event, and it was the beginning of a period of 30 hours when Tim is going to now travel to London. The idea is CERN is the origin of the web. London symbolizes like the web of today, connected, global. And then from London, where there is another event planned for tonight at the Science Museum, he's going to travel to Lagos, Africa, where the other half of the web, mostly or the other half, the future half of the web that's not connected yet, is symbolically, meaning mostly in Africa and Asia and in other emerging parts of the world. There is also an hour by hour kind of play in this 30 hours. So we can
So starting 8 o'clock this morning. Yeah.
Yes.
Each hour. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you should think about what you were doing in 1989. if you want to tweet about that, like you could do, you've got to do that in about the next 30 seconds. So now is the time to tweet about what you were thinking, what you were doing with the web in 1989, and then it's okay if you're slightly inaccurate. But then we will have an hour thinking about about 1990 and so on as we go through this 30-hour, and we'll be actually traveling to London and then to Lagos during that time. You can just tweet. That's, I know. That's
or follow. We are going to send you off with a present, and we're going to give it to you in an interesting form. But first, I want to have the audience listen to the digital version of it for a few seconds. Can we just play the clip? So, Domenico Vicinanza, who's a former CERN physicist and music composer, and his partner Genevieve Williams from the University of Exeter, took your original memo from 1989 and created this song, which lasts 3 minutes in the full version around it, basically around the idea of connecting information and how do you turn that into music. Now, the full 3 minutes will be up on the event website, so we can all listen to it. And we want to give it to you as a gift. They made it for you. But of course, they made it based on a 1989 document, and so we're going to give it to you the way we would have given it to you in 1989. And that's what Hannah has in her hands.
We're going to be leaving now.
Thank you, Tim.
So.
Safe trip.
Thank you.
Tim Berners-Lee.
Okay, we're going to go out this way. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tim. It was a joy, really, delight. Yeah. Enjoy. It was Melissa.
The tyranny of airplane schedules. It's a real Walkman from 1989 with a real cassette tape inside, and that sound recorded. You can all listen to the full song, which starts literally from the single server, so the single instrument, which is a piano, and then builds up as the web develops and as information gets connected and linked. I also need to mention that Domenico and Genevieve worked with somebody here at CERN to realize that, and that's Maria Dimu, whom I also